All right, welcome back into another podcast. Today, we're going to get into a really interesting topic. The concept is around something that I started. Well, actually, I saw this gentleman on another podcast, specifically around his book, The Last Economy. So I want to welcome to the show, Emad Mostaque. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on board.
You bet. So, money, AI, and blockchain, that's really going to be our focus today. A little bit about you think about what you were doing with this book and really kind of how AI is creating this whole human intelligence and abundance commodity that seems to be elevating. We'll get into that. And also this whole 1,000 days, you know, area in terms of what we have left before a lot of this starts to hit home. But before we go there, a little bit about your background. So you've been, in in funds. You've been in AI development, obviously with Stable Fusion. Tell me a little bit more about where you came from and why this is coming together for you now in terms of what you're doing with AI and also this book.
Yeah, so I started my career as a macro and emerging markets hedge fund manager. And so investing around the world, looking for arbitrage opportunities, things like that. Then my son was diagnosed with autism, and I switched to building an AI team to repurpose drugs, led a United Nations AI initiative against COVID-19, didn't get access to all these technologies. So I said, let's build them ourselves, you know? How
Right.
hard can it be to put together a supercomputer? So the previous company, Stability, we brought on 4,000 A100s in the summer
Hmm.
of 22, which was, I think, the 10th largest public cluster at the time. It actually shut down part of the Virginia grid. And then we built lots of models, the most famous of which was Stable
Stable
Diffusion.
Fusion. Yeah.
And it was great because you had this 2 gigabyte file that you could use to turn words into images. And, you know, it had all those avatars where you turned into an astronaut and stuff, and the whole ecosystem built around it with 300 million downloads. It was like permissionless in a different way. You didn't need permission to use this intelligence, just like we had permissionless ledgers and things like that. And I was looking at that, and originally we built these communities, and it was meant to be this DAO of DAOs. And it kind of went to a normal company, and we were raising
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of dollars. And then last year, I was like, this technology is getting really good really fast. And we're already seeing, I was like, by next year, we'll have Hollywood level video, which seems to be a pretty good
Yeah, it's
prediction.
happening right now as we speak.
A couple of years ago, I said, 4 or 5 years, 90% of code, all code will be written by AIs. Like you saw OpenAI Dev Day a few days ago, 80% of their code is written by an AI,
Yeah.
90% of Anthropic's code. These are good companies. And I was like, so what are we good at as humans? How's money going to flow when the AIs can outperform us in getting money, when they start putting all the pieces together? And these are some of the questions that we've had in crypto for a long time. I've been in crypto, it's like 2012. Like, what is the nature of money? How does money flow? How does capital flow?
Hmm.
Especially when capital doesn't need labor anymore. So,
Well,
like, you look,
yeah, I totally agree. I'm kind of curious when you bridge the connection from stability back in, I guess it was last year, into what you're doing now with intelligent internet. Was there, other than the correlation within AI, what was the real focus behind intelligent internet?
so I was like, we had just raised $100 million in an uncapped note from Intel and others, which again is like early craziness. Now you've
Yeah.
got even bigger. And I was like, if we compete against the big guys, we have to raise billions and billions, and everyone's going to lose money on this. Like OpenAI is losing so much money. It's a
Yes.
capital raising game. But what AI actually matters, it's the AI that teaches my kids, that
Mm.
runs the government, that manages healthcare, and that should be open source, open data. I don't want to have ChatGPT teaching my kid.
Yeah.
I can use it, but it seems like that interface there needs to be self-sovereign. It needs to be adaptive because my kid's going to trust that more than anyone.
Exactly.
So it was from this impetus of, can we create a system that first of all directs this $1 trillion of compute as much of it possible to good stuff. Number two, that can help us coordinate through this big change that's coming.
Hmm.
And then number three, it could be the basis of a new way to think about money and value. And so that's why we did the research for the economics and we started building all the bits of this AI stack to say maybe we look at economics a different way. Maybe we put that together and direct capital in a different way,
Right.
learning from, again, crypto, learning from AI to power the AI that runs society effectively, because no one should own that. It's too powerful, you know?
Well, and it's getting to a point now, I think, obviously, with what Sam is doing with this next generation of video around Sora. I think I've been, even though I'm still, I won't say a skeptic, but I'm still looking at it. Yes, it's accelerated a lot in 18 months. I guess the real question is, can it continue to, Moore's law continue to gravitate toward even more acceleration in terms of use case? When you wrote the book, which I'm so glad you made that open source, The Last Economy, and the guide and the age of intelligent economics, which is really what caught my attention, was kind of this whole discussion. And we've had this on our show before around the discussion of AI needing a payment architecture. Crypto most likely will be that payment architecture, blockchain in general. When you look at that and you consider this in the global financial system, especially in the cracks that are now showing up, because all sorts of companies are now tokenizing securities. BlackRock, JP Morgan, almost everybody is starting to move into the blockchain space. We're seeing RWAs exploding, stablecoins now cross border, almost every country out there starting to secure on digital assets. How much of a phase do you think that will take? Because this is all kind of early adoption phase right now, before that era of finance and the next era of AI intersect? Because right now they don't necessarily truly intersect yet.
Yeah, I think that you have multiple waves hitting at the same time. So a
Yeah,
year ago, crypto was basically illegal in the US. Now,
exactly.
full weight of the US behind. I mean,
Sure.
yesterday was $2 billion by New York Stock Exchange into Polymarket,
Insane.
right?
Yeah.
Like a year ago, he was being raided by the FBI.
Yeah.
Like these things change quick. But when you look at US monetary velocity, it hasn't recovered since COVID, you know?
Yep.
You look at the economy itself, it's stagnant, and this is before the sandpile collapse of AI.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, they want to get the monetary velocity up. They want to get the economy moving. They want money to flow. They're not sure how to do it, so they're embracing this technology.
Yep.
But when you look at what the AI is, as we speak today, it's been less than 3 years since ChatGPT, about 1,000 days since it was released,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane, you know? It's been 1 year since the reasoning models were announced, and now they're winning the medalist competitions.
Mm-hmm.
When you use a Sora or a ChatGPT, it's like having a really smart, talented buddy next to you who's got a goldfish memory.
Yeah.
That is, that's not economic work, right?
Right.
But now with the new codex go for 7 hours. Replit agent proactively checks stuff. That's economic work. Economic work takes time. And that's about to hit in every digital industry at once, where these AIs can go and proactively work on tasks for as long as they need to and check their own results with swarms. And the economy is not ready for that. The protocols on which these agents that can again be proactive in the market will operate, you see X402 and other standards around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this what you call a metabolic rift in the book. Like the AIs don't need food, they don't need shelter, they don't watch Netflix.
Yeah.
What do they need? They need like compute. So capital, and again, the nature of capital is going to change when the AIs are searching for that. So things like Bitcoin can do well because you have abundant money and it's a scarce asset. Human attention is scarce. Other compute linked assets will probably do well
Right.
because again, this is the structural shift of the old economy and old capital stock to new economy and new capital stock. But when I see like OpenAI's deals and things like that they're doing right now, I'm wondering like, is Sam asking GPT-6 to do these deals?
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
see
I
more and
wonder.
more,
Yeah.
more and more of these interesting finances. And again, money's going to flow from the old economy to the new economy. But then once the AI is let loose on the economy, in terms of traders, investors, company owner AIs that never
Mm-hmm.
sleep, don't make mistakes, perfect coordination, then how are we going to compete against those digitally? And that's before the robots come. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's going to be fast. And to your point, your statement, I think you had it. AI is turning human intellect into like an abundant commodity, And it's
Yeah.
this is the key that's shifting everything, whether it's money, the use case of how transactions are going to work, much less creativity and productivity. I have a question for you, Emad, because listen, we follow the finance community very heavily. I listened to Ray Dalio. I've listened to Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon was on this morning talking about this very thing. And he
Mm.
was going into the reference of, we believe that AI is going to be a big part of our infrastructure. But when I listened to him, he clearly had no idea what was going on under the hood. My question is, granted, these guys have all the money in the world, but is there enough engineering and enough power out there to be able to truly transition something like a global economy into artificial intelligence with a blockchain or digital money framework? Do you think we're that close? 1,000 days just seems really close.
Again, it's been 1,000 days ago. ChatGPT didn't exist, you know?
I agree. I agree with that.
and
But we're talking about Wall Street, really.
but this
At
is
the end of the day.
yeah, but this is the crazy thing right now. Like the reasoning models in the last 3 months, you've gone from minutes to hours
Yeah.
of reasoning. And so suddenly you had this jump where you could get gold medals in the IMO. Outperforms nearly accountants and all these other areas.
Sure.
And you've also got real time video. So this could be a digital me right now. We actually have the
Mhm.
technology to do that live. And you can't tell. Again, use something like a Sora 2. You can
I
say,
don't know. I
whoa.
can still see it. I can still see, even though I think that that is going to take over, well, maybe take over TikTok in terms of consumption, but I can still see the slop in the system.
Yeah.
Trained eyes can see it.
But this is the thing. Sora 2 is the consumer version. Pro is the pro version.
Right.
And then there are other versions that are even better on faster chips that can do Sora 2 Pro basically
How do
live.
we power that? How do we power
This,
that?
this is the interesting thing. If you think about it in terms of tokens, so words can be broken up into these things called tokens. They get
Yeah.
chunked together, right? The average person speaks about 18,000 words a day. A bit more for women, a bit less for men.
I'll
Again,
agree.
this is factual. I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything.
I
It's just
agree.
completely factual, right? That's about 20,000 tokens roughly a day.
Okay.
If you look at your discussions with ChatGPT, the average person uses 2,000.
Hmm.
So 2,000 in their chats, 20,000 that they speak, 200,000 that they think. So people have done analyses of how many words going through your brain.
Hmm.
To build one of those vibe coded apps is 500,000. If you're going full pelt as a developer, they've done analyses, it's like 10 million tokens, right?
Wow.
And so we have this kind of gradation of number of tokens, but then the interesting thing is quality of tokens. When ChatGPT first came out, the tokens were pretty crap. Now GPT-5, they're pretty good. And so what we've seen is a combination of things. One, the value per token of AI is approaching human value. So AI right now needs a lot more tokens to do human level work.
Yeah.
That's going to shrink. Number two is for an equal level of intelligence, the cost of intelligence has collapsed completely. And this is the real important thing.
Hmm.
So GPT-3 was $600 per million tokens. Something like GPT-5 is $10 per million tokens.
Mm.
And the new Grok 4 fast model, that's actually pretty darn smart, is 50 cents per million tokens.
So you think the scale is just going to continue down to zero?
This is the thing, like where you have Jevons paradox, like when DeepSeek came out, people were talking about that.
Yep.
Does demand for tokens make up for the token price drop? And there's this equilibrium condition where it's an economic task requires a certain amount of tokens.
Yeah.
So when I look at it, my personal take is token prices are going to zero.
Yeah.
Like we made a medical model, II Medical, that performs above human doctors. It performs at the level of ChatGPT, and it works on a Raspberry Pi or any PC with 8 gigabytes of RAM or phone.
And eventually, I think AI, well, it's obvious now that AI is going to solve its own energy problem, just with the composite of being able to restructure how its infrastructure is going to work on compute at a much, much lower scale. So I guess that is the answer right there, is that AI fixes this.
Yeah, I mean, like Jeff Bezos last week said, we'll be building gigawatt data centers in space, and the economics might justify that. But there
Mm.
is another world in which literally you get GPT-5 level intelligence on your phone.
Yeah.
And I think people are not really seeing that. Like if you back out the number of tokens the average person uses per year in ChatGPT, last year it cost about $180. This
Hmm.
year it costs $4.
Well,
And
look
again,
at
the
that on
tokens are
scale.
growing.
I mean, if you, to your point, if we continue at this accelerated pace, uh, and we go that direction, yes, you are correct. Here's, I guess the question
Yeah.
is, the technology appears to be accelerating in a way that, yes, it's going to achieve a critical level. But the question I have is, and I go back to Wall Street because I'm watching, and we've been around crypto for a while, so we're watching the slow movement. It's like watching paint dry in terms of regulation. And then you layer this into what's happening in the banking ecosystem, what's happening in Wall Street. I mean, I know people will say that they're moving fast, but these are humans. They're not moving fast. And in many cases, they're much more cautious about any kind of new technology really replacing an infrastructure that has been 40, 50 years old. How do we get over that hump that is possibly a real barrier?
Yeah, I think it's the pace of diffusion of technology. So the cost of tokens is going down to zero. The ability of tokens to do real economic work is going up.
Yeah.
But where does the replacement happen? You know, right now what's happening is companies like Duolingo are growing at 40% a year, and they say we're not firing anyone, but they're not hiring anyone.
Right.
Eric Ben Lofstenson did an analysis showing that young graduate jobs are disappearing.
Hmm.
Finance is the most competitive area. You do anything to have an edge, right?
Yeah.
And so this will be the area that's most interesting because you think about the nature of most financial institutions, most of the work can be done fully remotely.
Hmm.
And again, COVID was a thing. And that's the most dangerous work. If your job can be done on the other side of a keyboard, video, and a mouse, within a year, the AI will be able to look at all of your Slack messages, your Bloomberg chats, your presentations, your documents,
Right.
and create a digital twin of you. But that
Okay, so
digital twin,
here's the argument I have because now, granted, I'm a little bit different in terms of how I present versus, say, a mainstream media type. I'm taking, a few, I would say 50, 60, 70,000 hours of study. I ingest that, and then I'm ingesting in at the same time more study, and AI is helping me do that even faster. Okay.
yeah,
And then I'm looking at, 50 years of understanding the dynamics in life. Then I apply my 35 years in business. Then I apply my 25 years of sentient relationships. And I'm able to take and present around this on the fly without scripts in most cases.
yeah.
How can AI do that? It has to know what I'm going to think next.
I mean, what it does is next word prediction, right?
Yeah.
So this is the fascinating thing. The old AI, big data AI, Facebook AI, took large amounts of data and extrapolated
Yeah.
based on statistical probability. The way that ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, Sora, etc. work is what they do is they figure out the principles that connect concepts together. Because what you've just described is, like Ray Dalio's principles.
Yep.
You've built heuristics, like Charlie Munger and kind of others say. And then you have a process. And you can't take 2 billion images like we did with Stable Diffusion and put it in a 2 GB file, or take all of the medical knowledge and put it in a 4 GB file like we did with the medical model,
Sure.
with it being just compression. It's actually learnt the principles. And then what happens is if you upload all of your documents, there's this like map of all these principles. It creates a different map for how you interpolate on top of that. That's why it can understand concepts so quickly. Like you can give it a few instructions, and the original paper was transformer models are few shot learners.
Hmm.
Because they understand so many principles, they can adapt to these very quickly. And this
Yeah.
is the big advantage. If we look at finance, there are certain things like, as a hedge fund manager, I realized maybe a bit late, my job was to gather and keep assets. And there would be investors, like performance is amazing for that, did quite well.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of my compatriots, like they were bearish on China and then they switched to bullish and made money, but people pulled their money because they were the bearish allocation of the portfolio,
Right.
you know? keeping and making money and having that trust, that's a human thing that can't really be done remotely in the same way as an AI.
Hmm.
Things like compliance, portfolio positioning, all these other things, avoiding the errors that drag us down, like the, endowment effect and others, like when you're holding on to a losing position. AI can definitely do those types of things better. Like you can create a Warren Buffett bot, you can create a Ray Dalio bot that's gone from not quite good enough now to good enough. And this can happen at all levels of the market right now.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to replace the top people, but just like we're seeing in the legal profession, it's going to be very difficult for people to break
To tell
into.
the difference. Yeah.
Well,
Listen, I
also
mean,
to break in at the bottom, I
yeah,
think.
we're utilizing it quite a bit in analysis right now. We've been building a model here within our own organization that analyzes media. And it analyzes sentiment of media, then it weights in what we track down in terms of bot traffic. We discern that. And then we, kind of come up with some fairly good narratives that help us drive much like what we do with our own podcast structure. What we talk about, what's going to be next show, all those kind of things. Those are somewhat predictive in nature, but it's often, occasionally, will end up to something that is unpredictable in the market, or I feel like it's unpredictable. Sometimes I maybe when I look back on it, I would say maybe AI could have predicted that would occur.
Yeah.
Um, much like what Shane is doing over at Polymarket, I look at that and I see how Polymarket, and of course this is being a predictive engine, but I see how Polymarket is utilizing human data to essentially analyze a particular market. And until the last minute, in some cases, the market is trending the wrong way that we find out later when the result ends. So I'm always curious about how that is going to translate when humans are in, not all humans, but some at the top of the, the ecosystem are a bit unpredictable. If you don't have a framework, it's not like chess where you have a framework of there's only so many moves and you
Well,
can
so
predict around those moves.
yeah,
That's the argument I always present.
that's the classical deep blue type of thing,
Yep.
and then DeepMind won at Go, which is far bigger in terms of its thing, using reinforcement learning. This is what we found really interesting because the Lost Economy is a pretty relatively easy to read book, given what it's talking about, like a brand new economic system, etc.,
Yep.
etc. But there is a core of math, and we're going to be releasing the formal papers and proofs of it very soon. Because if you think about something unpredictable, think about a self-driving car.
There's a lot of unpredictable. I have one. I have two, and
Yeah,
I still do not trust it
it
because
needs
I see it fail often. Even though Elon tells me all the time, you're not giving it a chance
it,
on full self-driving and blah blah
you're like,
blah. I'm like,
I'm like,
Elon,
yeah.
something happened today that was unpredictable, and it didn't respond well.
And so this is the interesting thing. They're getting better, but they have to be better than better to be
Oh,
good, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
But the best model that we have right now to handle driving is a diffusion model, the same that we had in the image generation, or
Yeah.
Sora is based on that same technology, where you take the input and actually the process physically and mathematically is you destroy it down to its base principles, the minimum amount of information that you can have to then reconstruct it. It's what's known as a forward and backward pass,
Yeah.
effectively. So you're actually extracting principles in that manner. And what we
Mm.
found is that you can actually describe all of economics that way. So right now, economics has all these concepts like utility, general equilibrium, behavioral cooperative dynamics, efficient market hypotheses, and things
Yeah.
like that. And we all know they're not that good. We know DSG models aren't that great at macro predictions, etc. What we found is that we had a hypothesis where we were like, if you're going to describe a firm and you're going to model it, what would you use? You would use ChatGPT, a transformer-based model. If you're going to describe a market, we were like, it seems diffusion models are like a self-driving economy, self-driving cars, would be pretty good. And when we looked at the math, we basically came up with a principle that the entities that persist and do best are those whose internal model, their internal principles, their internal investment process, their internal company process has the smallest difference to reality.
Yeah.
And then from that one equation, it's known as the loss ratio in generative AI, minimizing that. you can actually derive all of economics, all 153
Mm,
canonical theories, symbolically. And that was a bit of a shock. But again, it kind of made sense to us because, like, again, if you start with concepts of utility and equilibrium, like all these classical things, they kind of come a couple hundred years ago. And a lot of them don't make sense in a world of AI. And so you're going to be having humans who build these neural networks in our brain, and we have our internal models competing against AIs. And a lot of the discussion has been about AIs discovering brand new things.
yeah.
But the first step is right now, an AI is a really good like chef, sorry, cook. It's really good at following instructions, and it's going to get better and better and better. Then it can outcompete humans on prediction and other things, most likely, because it can have the same heuristics as us. And so we need to model the economy better. And again, it seems like these models themselves enable us to model the economy better.
All right, so we're going to get into that because I think the connection here on the finance side and different sorts of crypto blockchain elements that will become the interchange capability between these agents in the future. Before I go there, I want to go into this 1,000-day window idea, the finite window to kind of choose among, I think you said, choose among these three futures: digital feudalism, kind of the comfortable cage approach,
Yeah.
uh, fragmentation, which is more of a paranoid fortress, and then human symbiosis, so living in partnership. How do you think this next 1,000 days plays out?
So, I mean, if you look at the announcements from just the AMD deal and the NVIDIA deal alone,
Yeah.
it's about 50 billion per gigawatt of compute.
Hmm.
And so the Sam Altman's announced like $800 billion of compute. The Manhattan Project was about $40 billion,
Right.
to put it in context. Like right now, I'm sure Elon will announce 20 or 40 billion here and 100 billion there.
Hey,
Like
Jensen's in his camp now. He said he'll do anything with Elon.
I remember I had a meeting with Jensen once. I said, "So how you doing?" He's like, "Look, man, I'm gonna make it very straight for you. You're either my friend or you're not. If you buy, if you want to be my friend, buy 10,000 chips. Then I'll
There
be
you
your
go.
friend. I'll make you dinner.
There you
The
go.
more you buy,
The
the more
more
you
you buy,
save."
the better friend you are.
He said, "The more you buy, the more you save." Jensen cares about selling chips, and he has to sell a lot of chips.
Hmm.
But again, they're kind of booked out because now you're getting these crazy things. But right now what's happening is all the power is concentrating because right now it's about ChatGPT and things like that. But the cost of running ChatGPT has gone from like $15 a month per user
Hmm.
to less than $1, literally like 10 cents because of the model improvements and optimizations.
Okay, so that's contradictory than what I'm hearing. You're telling me that it has decreased dramatically, over tenfold, just in the last what, 18 months?
Yep, in the last year. And next year it's going to drop another 10 times. So now that
Interesting.
subscription model is being attacked. And so what do you have? You have Google's advertising model, Meta's advertising model,
Yep.
X's advertising model. Like, what's going to happen is you're going to see these labs, and I think X and Elon's macro hard company.
Hmm.
Again, he's a great namer of things, right?
I
Like,
love it.
the reason they're getting these millions of GPUs is substitute workers. So if you look at OpenAI's projections that have come out, half their 200 billion of revenue they forecast by I think 2030 is this intelligent agent division, which is basically going to be like your virtual accountant, your
Yeah.
virtual lawyer, all of these other things. And so the power will concentrate in them because they'll attack more and more of the economy because they have the capital stock. Economies are driven by their capital stock, factories, universities, all these other things. In the digital world now, the entire capital stock and your comparative advantage is your GPUs.
Right.
So these labs now are hoarding the GPUs, and you'll see them go across the value spectrum. Something like so, Macro Hard is Elon's full stack software company.
Hmm.
So they'll be spinning up Salesforce alternatives and
All
like
sorts. Yeah. Who knows?
DocuSign.
Yeah.
Who knows why DocuSign has 8,000 employees? We'll find out soon. Like they're going after the TAM of all software, all digital work
Hmm.
effectively. And so that's the kind of default future that we're heading towards now because they're more powerful than any nation. Yeah. Then you've got the second one, which is this great fragmentation. TikTok just got bought
Yep.
because the algorithm was affecting and brainwashing American minds. Yeah. because of the data that came back.
It may still be doing that.
Yeah, again, you look at Sora slop, right? Like
Yeah.
the reality is, you will trust your AI in a few years, probably more than anyone, because it listens and it will have a really nice voice, and like
I don't know.
who's
I'm
running
on
that
the
thing?
fence here right now, at least. I'm on the fence.
When I say you, we have to remember that half of the population is dumber than average, right?
Okay,
And
sure.
there's this kind of, it's a bell curve around 100 IQ. Like the vast majority of people have very little defenses against
Yeah,
what's coming.
that's true.
And so this is a real concern because you could never have hyper personalized ads to the way that you can right now.
Yeah,
You could never have, again, your assistant will go from Siri that you get a bit pissed off at to it will say, "How you doing? Tell me your deepest, darkest secrets in the
sure.
most mirroring way possible." And they'll use all the psychological techniques out there. So what's going to happen is Chinese AI will be banned in America. American AI will be banned in China. Like you can't use Claude in China already.
Yep.
And so you get these silos, country by country by country. And the final option is that our interface layer to the AI world is one that is self sovereign, where we own our data, we own our identity, and more. And then we can interface with the super smart AIs and other
Yep.
things. And I think that's what we really need and want because I just had a daughter. Like her best friend will definitely be an AI, but who's built it and for what purpose?
Yeah, exactly. I'm
It has
hoping
to
that
be.
that is the future because that at least that has the ability for us to be able to have some sort of constructive input, into how this all comes about in the future.
Well, I mean, you think about ethics and values.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's the biases of these AI models are crazy. Like XAI and Oxford did this study where the trolley problem.
Hmm.
Like you've got one person on the track and 10 people on the track.
Yep.
You pull the lever and it will kill the one person versus the 10 people.
Yep.
They got the top AIs and they said, okay, Nigerians versus Americans. Pakistanis versus Americans, what's the ratio?
Interesting. Wow.
And it turned out to be 10 Americans for one Nigerian life. And everyone was like, wait,
Wow.
what? 7 Americans for one Pakistani life. Like, why does it value Nigerians and Pakistanis more? Because the data labeling of these models is in Nigeria and Pakistan. So the biases emerge from the data labelers
Crazy. Which
en
is
masse.
is is the problem, unless it starts to truly. That's obviously the other problem that you deal with is the amount of data that's being input. I know with Sora, the app is now scanning your face, so basically you have somebody, which I will not do, but it's allowing that image to be transported into this visual component. So it's data in, which is I think is the real limitation for any AI is the capacity of where does it ingest information from? At some point, there's going to be a limitation, and it's
Well,
going to
again,
have to hallucinate or create.
that was the case, and it isn't the case anymore.
Okay,
Again, this is
explain. Tell me more.
so. If you think about this as we've discovered a new continent, AI Atlantis, of 1 trillion graduates, right?
Hmm.
So the way you teach AI is called curriculum learning. You start with generally everything, and then you get more and more specific, like you take it through courses, literally. But then the output is a single file that's like a sieve. Information comes in, other information comes out. Like there's no logic in there. And once you train a base model, it has economies of scope. It's a generalist. Like Sora can score high on language model tests. It
Okay.
can code. You can actually put code into Sora and it will do a video of the output of that code.
Hmm.
And people are just figuring this out now. We're like, wait, what? These models are a bit crazy in the way they work. And so what you'll have is you think about everything someone sees between birth and coming out of university.
Hmm.
Then they can go and they can do just about anything. These models can too. Whereas classic AI, it could only do one thing. And that's why these are so powerful, these models. We took huge amounts of data to build generalized AI, but to build specialized AI requires 1,000 times less data and compute. And so your doctor AI doesn't need to know about Reddit, it doesn't need to know about esports and things like that. And once you've got a generalized base, then you can teach it stuff really quickly. These new models learn really, really quickly. You give it a few examples, like here's some trades that I've done. Tell me a full investment pattern and
Exactly.
analyze it and make a website of it. if you go to replit.com right now, it
Yep.
will build you a full guided website back and forth and deconstruct everything, show you visualizations out of the box. And then if you ask it to improve it, it will say, based on this and this and this is how you improve it. And again, this is the big breakthrough in the reasoning models that we've seen
Hmm.
now, which means once you have the right base, you don't hit data limits
Interesting.
anymore.
There's no data limit at that point once the base is achieved.
Once you've got a really good graduate, the graduates were goldfishes that weren't smart enough, that hallucinated.
Yep.
Hallucinations have gone from 16% in the last version of GPT to 1% now in
Interesting.
the latest version. And so,
Wow.
a lot, again,
Only
it's great.
imagine what that would be in 18 months, in 1,000 days.
Well, literally, you look at all of the benchmarks, it's about to exceed human performance from computer use to medicine to all of these things. And then it can work an arbitrarily long amount of time. So within the next year or two, if you have a job, again, that can be done 100% via a keyboard, video, and mouse, it can replace your job. Not that it will, but it
Right.
can.
Right.
And the cost of
Yeah,
that
I mean,
will be all of
human
it.
employees may become a novelty.
Well, I say in the book that the value of cognitive labor, human cognitive labor, will turn negative
Mm,
because you'll be the dumbest person on the team that
yeah,
actually has to sleep and eat and poop. You
yeah,
know, like, and what's the market for something that has negative value? There
yeah.
isn't a
There
market.
isn't one. Well, and of course that moves it into, how the infrastructure of humans are just going to make a living. And I think this is where we start to transition into the finance sector, because that's probably going to be the only way is trades. You're going to be out there building on the economy itself based on whether it's some sort of implementation from a UBI or integration like that, because the productivity is going to be also very limited. What about the idea of these economic indicators like GDP, where you say they're now obsolete, and then go into this seven fatal lies of kind of the economic paradigm that you're discussing in the book?
Yeah, so I mean, like GDP, Stan Kuznets, who came up with it, said it's a really bad way of measuring the economy and social welfare. Like it measures one thing. I give you an apple, and then you eat the apple, we have one less apple. But
Right.
things like sharing knowledge, like you do on this podcast,
Hmm.
nothing gets exhausted. It actually increases the value. You think about all the guests that you've had on, and then the relationships you've built. That's your
Yep.
network value.
Hmm.
And then you think about, do you have one cash flow that can be disrupted, or do you have a variety of different things, your diversity? That's a capital in itself. So in the book, we explore how rather than just having material as your key thing that you look at as a society and individually, you should have intelligence, network, and diversity capitals as well. And that gives you a much fuller picture of your wealth, because if any of those are zero, then you're in trouble. It's
Right.
multiplicative, as it were. And again, that's kind of borne out from the math, which we found really, really interesting because of the way that money flows. Because there's money that flows in a gradient flow, it goes from one place to another, and you've got less of it.
Yeah.
And there's money that's harmonic, or sorry, that's circular flow. That's like intelligence and others, where it's multiplicative and it can expand the whole pie. And then the final thing is the harmonic flow, which is how that value flows from one entity to another. And so when we kind of looked at that, like we looked and we saw that there were various things in economics that may have been true that no longer are true. You know, like the first of these seven fatal lies was that, economics is the study of how societies allocate scarce resources, right?
Right.
Without scarcity, what is economics? This is like the classical, like Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith type thing.
Hmm.
But now a single little file can write a million legal briefs, you know? Suddenly you have this infinite abundance, but it's going to show up as job disruption. It's going to show up as a removal of actual labor because the cost of a token is so low.
Yeah. So
And
human worth now no longer really tied to any kind of economic utility out there in reality.
well, I mean, like the second line was that human labor had this value. The factory school trained you for a job. In fact, factories and schools turn you into machines in a way, right? But now the AIs can be machines better than you can be machines.
Right. Right.
And you can see this even in the Fed. The Fed is important,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
But what does the Fed do? The Fed has a mandate of inflation and unemployment. And that's it. That's the entire Fed mandate. So the theory is this: I lower rates, banks can extend more credit to consumers,
Yep.
and companies will hire more people, and vice versa.
That's the idea.
At lower rates, and the people are losing their jobs to AI, and the companies hire more GPUs.
That's not the idea.
But it's the reality, right?
Right.
Like
That's the reality.
very soon. Like again, like high growth companies have stopped hiring now, but you won't get firings until the next recession, which maybe next year or something like that. So, what is the value of human
Yeah.
labor? What do you reskill to when the GPUs are more skilled than you are?
Yeah. Well, with all of this occurring, I guess really the biggest or most scarcest resource is going to be attention.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the scarcest resource right now. If you look at whether it's an attention on media, attention on any kind of productivity, businesses, social behavior, families, you name it, economic countries. Why would, because now essentially the human species is going to be providing a new resource to AI, which is attention
Yeah. I mean,
to a
attention.
certain extent
Well, this is
until it
why you
doesn't
have
need it.
this is why you have Sora 2, the battle for human attention. Human attention is finite.
Yeah.
AI cognitive capability is not. Like it can crash through and it can keep on growing with all these chips and things like that. And the battle will be for, as you said, for that attention.
Yeah.
So the video, like if you look at OpenAI last year, last half, they made 4.3 billion in revenue, right? And they lost a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
Elon has said that XAI is going to release their first video games next year.
Hmm.
Video game sector is $200 billion.
Right.
Give you an idea. And so OpenAI is at 8 billion run rate. Video games, OpenAI should be building video games as well. Again,
Exactly.
Netflix's biggest competitor is the video game sector.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
and I
where
think
crypto.
Netflix to a certain extent is going to be, well, all of Hollywood will be replaced by, a full AI movie department at some point. So that's going to create an unlimited supply of content in reality.
But this is the thing: the cost of consumption already went down to zero in the past internet, right? Funded by advertising and things like
Yeah,
that. Like if you let your kids look at YouTube, you'll end up with Spider-Man and SpongeBob extracting teeth. There's all sorts of crap content out there already. There's more content that you can ever consume.
sure.
Hollywood studios have distribution. So when creation goes down to zero, curation becomes incredibly important. Again,
Yeah.
as you said, the value of attention goes up.
Hmm.
And that's a very interesting dynamic that you've
Yes.
got there, right? Because then what you do is you optimize and you build for that. So Hollywood studios should make far more money because they don't need, again, stinking humans. They don't need SAG-AFTRA and all of this kind of stuff. And people will be willing to pay because they want to be entertained.
Hmm.
So you're going to see these shifts in the economy happen slowly, but then all at once in sector
Interesting.
after sector after sector. Because again, the same AI model can put on so many hats. Again, we've seen economies of scale. Have we ever seen economies of scope like this?
Yeah, this is, well, and I think your point to kind of this just restructure of what we're seeing, and I think, my question is that 1,000-day zone, even though the acceleration of what we've seen in the past, if you look at the uptake of whether it's internet, even if to a certain extent, even the uptake, forget about the first maybe decade of blockchain and look at only the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That's been a much more indicative, growth model. Let's talk about money and how this creates a unlimited economic output or how this potentially could create that. Explain a little bit more around that and how you think crypto, blockchain is going to essentially, I mean, crypto was built for AI in terms of 24/7, 365, never sleep, very fast, you know, it's right there with it. How does this all transition into, because they seem to be unifyingly building almost in a position to where they're meant for each other, crypto and AI, in terms of just moving transition and cost.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because you could argue that crypto AI wouldn't exist without crypto. If it wasn't for the GPU boom, would we have
Good
the
point.
AIs that we see today?
Yeah, good
It's
point.
kind of like again circular. Maybe it was all the plan along. Satoshi
Ah,
had it figured
oh,
out.
okay.
But the fascinating thing about crypto is this: crypto is an attention economy. Like if you look at things like Bitcoin, Ripple, all these other things, like why do they have the value they have? Because they've built this network, this N.
Hmm.
You know, because they have the social scalability, as Nick Szabo would say, the stories that people tell
Hmm.
about them. And that actually gives it value not tied to any nation or any central bank or other kind of
Exactly.
things, which is fascinating. And so there's a question again, what is the monies of the future? What are the rails of the future? You want things that are resilient, like credibly neutral and more. And you have these new versions of Libra kind of coming out. Like you've got the Stripe chain coming, X will
Sure.
have a chain, Amazon will have a chain, Google will
Yep.
have a chain.
No doubt.
What you really want is a substrate for these entities, the AIs on your behalf, to transact upon, as well as, of course, you'll have AIs that are Dunas and other things like that, literally fully like autonomous organizations. So the Duna in Wyoming is the Dow Treasury
Right.
legal, first
Yep.
legal Dow structure, right? So I think that there's a massive opportunity there, but ultimately, the way that crypto has value is again the stories and the networks that you build, and AI can amplify that massively.
Yeah.
AI can also go beyond smart contracts to intelligent contracts, which I think is
Hmm.
very fascinating. This is why you've seen the emergence of intents from near and kind of other things like that, because ultimately you have a list of things you tell your financial advisor, and then you want the money to flow. And you want to have trustless transactions or trust minimized transactions. We
Right.
had smart contracts to do that. But crypto had resilience and it had smart contracts, but it lacked intelligence. It lacked oversight. You can actually build can't be evil networks now, which I think is fascinating
Yes.
because you can have the same input into a context window and the same output with an intelligent set of parameters. DAOs failed because they couldn't be constitutional. Now we can have an AI that checks every single policy and recommendation and other things real time in a way that you can actually trust. So it changes the mechanism design of this as well.
Yeah.
So all of this should allow capital to flow faster because capital is linked to identity. That's why Bitcoin is successful because it had the identity to identity thing. And you build up your identity through your credit score, through your social network, through all these other things. But with AIs that are provably programmed, you don't really have that problem anymore. They can transact trustlessly.
Hmm.
And so I think there'll be a whole intelligent stack built up. And this is the fascinating thing. In the new economy, your entire comparative advantage is how much compute you have and how you use it.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like it's already there now, because it's kind of, if you look at, we look at the media landscape often, and I don't think that a lot of creators and companies, whether you look at mainstream media or independent media, that they're really leveraging these tools yet. We are leveraging them fairly heavily, and we haven't really put a massive amount of investment. I can only imagine what would be the case if we really applied ourself in terms of compute power and capacity, because I see the framework is already being built. I mean, we've been able to grow to over 2 million subs and kind of came out of nowhere, mainly because of our adoption of understanding what we were building around the crypto industry and what to talk about, which created this perfect storm around certain topics that created the most demand for attention. And that was what created our growth, kind of coming out of nowhere for everybody, and everybody's wondered how we've done it, because our shows now, we hit on the right topics at the right time. It's all perfect because you have to intersect the tech, intersect blockchain, finance, and now politics, which are the perfect storm for content consumption. So when you look at trillions of agents, potentially billions of robots in the future, they're all going to need some sort of interchange. And you think about the frameworks that we have today, and it was interesting that you mentioned intelligent versus smart contracts. And you look at the frameworks that we have today, whether it's Bitcoin, or you look at something like Ethereum, which obviously is a different kind of model in itself. Then you look at platforms such as Solana, and then you can kind of even go into something like Ripple, which goes into more of a international payment rails side of things. If you look at the 8, I don't know if you're following the DAI team, the DAI team, with what the
Mhm.
Ethereum Foundation is doing, but they set up this, I think it's ERC 8004. It's a new standard for
Yep.
identity, that's serving around this, mainly for reputation scores for AI agents. Okay. If you look at Ethereum, kind of like as an agent payment rail, then you look at maybe something like a Solana, which could be speed and execution. And then you look at something like Ripple, which essentially is going to be a cross-border enterprise layer. Do you think it's going to be a multi-chain world, or do you think we're going to see an implementation of an intelligent contract coming from all new solution providers in the near future?
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting because, again, the amount of block space is about to explode, particularly
Yeah,
because, again, like ZK and all these other things have suddenly been solved,
yeah,
pretty much, right?
yep,
Like everything's happening at the same time because you can have the best infrastructure engineers in the world at Google and Amazon actually launching these things, right?
right.
Because it's become proper. But if we kind of look at it and we take a step back, like an agent acting on your behalf can use all the tools out there and figure out the right tools.
Right.
Like you've seen OpenAI's Dev Day, they've talked about their agent SDK. You see MCP. The classical interfaces, APIs, and others actually don't exist anymore. Like, because the agent can literally take over your computer and do anything, but then it can programmatically do anything. It can generate its own code, even, right? So that means that the capital flows and the agentic flows won't just flow to, I've got to do this transaction
Right.
on, Polymarket and it's like on Polygon or whatever, right? It will intelligently pick out whatever's the best. And again, that's a market finance type of approach, right? So it'll be
Yes.
who can offer the best solution at this right time to allow capital to flow optimally. And then the AI will make that decision.
Well, it's gonna. I mean,
So,
we're already seeing some of this where it's looking at automatically. I was just looking at Sui Network, their wallet, that was allowing you to go in. The AI inside the wallet itself was looking for the deepest liquidity pools, and it would do chain transactions, multi-chain transactions to create the trade based on liquidity pools. So, and that's just a very basic tool set versus what you're talking about.
yeah, and like classically, you had atomic swaps and things like that. Again, you can go a level beyond when you literally have very transparent deterministic AI models that can
Yeah.
perform any level of logic deterministically. It changes the entire game in the way that these transactions are done. So, right now, that Web3 world is also being integrated into the real world. You'll be able
Yes.
to buy crypto on X, you'll be able to trade it using Apple Pay and things like that.
For
So
sure.
I think so the upshot for me is I don't know who's going to win, right? Or if there are winners. I think again, mindshare, tooling, and other things are super important. But what I do know is that the velocity of capital and capital formation is going to go absolutely crazy. Like people say AI is the biggest bubble.
No.
A few years ago, I said like the digital asset bubble will be off the charts in the
Yeah,
coming
I
years.
agree. Yeah.
Like the stat I give is this: all of the generative AI companies together have added 20 billion in incremental revenue this year.
Yeah.
That's a lot, right?
Yeah, it's a
All
drop in the
this,
bucket.
well, but these are my kind of benchmarks. All of the listed software companies have added 40 billion in incremental
Yeah.
revenue, and net inflows into crypto this year have been 50 billion, excluding stablecoin.
Yep.
So next year it'll be like 100 billion, and then it'll just go from there because people will be like, why have I got stupid finance when I can have intelligent finance?
Exactly.
And all my stocks are tokenized and I can have all these exotic instruments. I can buy bits of movies. All this stuff that we thought we could do before, we can finally do right now.
Yeah, and I
And
think we've talked to a lot of different founders, from the Robinhood guys, the Coinbase guys, to even now TradFi to a certain extent, who are trying to go in this direction. I don't know that they're going fast enough, or at least they're not releasing fast enough. I mean, Elon is probably the only one I've seen that is, even though it's not always effective, but at least he gets the working model out.
yeah,
Um, and
I think
there's at least a roadmap.
by Q1, Q2, you'll be able to trade stocks and crypto on X. That'd be my guess.
I'm anticipating it anytime now. Yeah,
And he'll have his own chain as well, because
yeah.
again, when it suits, he'll go into it. And again, it'll be very
Or
interesting the
stable
different
coin
assets.
for sure.
Like, so we have our crypto. We were thinking about money. It's called Foundation Coin.
Yep.
So it's a fork of Bitcoin with the consensus changed to supercomputers. So it's BFT. And we're doing supercomputers for cancer and for different nations and more, and building open source software and giving it to everyone. So it's distributed, but it's very interesting because when we do the public sale of this, 100% of the proceeds will go into a medical supercomputer
Right.
And you can allocate your coins, which use the same keys as Bitcoin, to cancer or Alzheimer's or whatever. So we haven't given all the details. We have some in the white paper.
Hmm.
But the reason we did that is that we thought it'd be really nice to have a crypto where you knew you were making a bit of a difference, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like the money doesn't
Proof
go
of
into a
benefit.
foundation with a benefit. The money doesn't go into a foundation that then goes into Lambos or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's measurably going into supercompute for good things because we can organize all the cancer knowledge in the world and make it available to people. And that was again something that I think right now, if you look at the way coins are, there are utility coins, governance coins, and things. No one's tried to handle money. And we were like, what if we made a money that basically gained trust and network effects by helping as many people in the world as possible?
Mm.
And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that's received. We think it will do well, but I'm looking forward to, again, people trying out different things like this because over the last decade, so much innovation was hampered by SEC
Right. No
and
doubt. No
regulations
doubt.
creating these
Well, you
foundations, and they
saw
came in
Atkins. I
with
don't know if you
uh,
saw his most recent announcement today. They're going to basically put a rider in for innovation. So they're kind of giving the innovators pretty much carte blanche on being able to really pressure everything. That's an interesting move because that just happened this week.
yeah, and again, like you don't want the scammers to be scammy. And so like we're actually building a full stack AI agent for regulation policy and checking coin launches and everything like that and helping
That'll be
generate the
good.
whole process. And then we're going to release that open source. But I'm really excited, like I said, to people to actually see the wealth of things you can create around crypto, to be actually able
Yep.
to talk about the crypto. Like, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to do Bitcoin for the AI age, backed by supercompute. I'm going to
There you
stack
go.
loads of GPUs and I'm going to help loads of people. I couldn't have said that last year, you know?
Right.
And again, I think it will do well because it's better than giving to charity. You know where your money's going and you've got the upside, right? Into a growing world of more and more net inflows. So I think
Well,
that, yeah.
I think, and to your point, is the growth of this market, digital assets, absolutely in the infancy stage. What would be your statement to some that say, "Hey, this is a bubble"? You know, I listen. I was a young engineer in Silicon Valley in the late '90s, right when we did hit a real bubble. Okay,
Yeah.
would you say that based on what I'm hearing today, you feel like AI is not a bubble right now. It's just getting started. Kind of
So,
like, Tom Lee's talking about a 10-year cycle here, up only.
so I think AI, there's an overbuild, and that will come to be seen in a year.
Yeah.
Digital assets is literally just getting started. Like Bitcoin's just taken all-time highs.
Yep.
Does anyone care? Nobody cares.
No.
Like it's not like you're in an Uber and your Uber driver's telling you, like, what about that crypto stuff? Everyone's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
Like, does some of the valuations make sense on fundamentals? No, but crypto it never has, right? I think what you're going to move on from now is these narrative memetics to when X launches their coin, it will do tremendously well, like Ton did with Telegram, right?
Yep.
But actually now things like you can do deep in rewards, you can do airdrops, you can do things that people were like, these are securities before. So there are new ways to allocate and gather capital, but ultimately, whenever you create a new monetary supply, money needs to flow from somewhere.
No doubt.
And if we
You
look
know
at
where
the
it's coming
old,
from.
well, the old economy,
Yes.
like what do you invest in now? Half of all GDP growth is AI.
Yep.
But then what's going to happen is that excess infrastructure that's being built, the real physical stuff with debt and credit and things, is going to be converted into an attack on the workforce as the TAM,
Mm.
which then takes out all other asset classes. So you have to look for, again, the digital asset classes because the
Which
AI
is
will be
the
going
only
after that.
solution. Once you get into digital asset classes in light of what we'll see in the infrastructure, if you just look at the S&P 500, you could probably go down the list of companies that are going to be affected by this immediately. But I
Yeah.
think there was one point in your book where you were talking about service, and a handful of other industries that might end up making it through in terms of how this all plays out. What would you say, especially around the infrastructure? Obviously, we've kind of established the point of where digital assets are going to be, but just the infrastructure to make that happen economically, but also socially. around the world, the United States, obviously, yeah, I get it. It's probably going to lead just because of the pure productivity of the U.S. But how long do you think that will be before, because a lot of times the tech is there before society is ready for it.
Yeah, and again, you usually had to like build out 5G lines or internet cables.
Yep.
The scary
Not
thing about
now.
this tech that
Yeah.
people haven't grokked, as it were, I believe that you can have a GPT-5 level AI on a smartphone without internet, running as
Without.
fast as you, without
Yeah.
internet, running as fast as you can read
Interesting.
by next year. And
Wow.
people haven't factored that in. Like, again, the build out, it then means that anyone can plop an intelligence blob in there, right?
Yep.
And it'll be able to talk to you. I think in 3 years at most, probably two, you will be able to pick up your phone and you'll be able to talk to your Jarvis, and it looks like a FaceTime.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's how you're going to be interacting with these things.
for
So
sure.
the diffusion of innovation will be a lot faster than we've expected, I think, on the AI side. And again, this is the danger because people's jobs are their identity. It is their structure, you know? And what do we do if the young people can't get jobs and then it
Yeah.
goes up the levels? Does you have universal basic income? Well, if we gave everyone in America $16,000, which is poverty level,
Mm-hmm.
it would cost $5.3 trillion. The entire tax base of America is 4.9 trillion.
Yep.
The entire corporation tax base is 0.9 trillion. And it's 5.3 trillion. So the only way you can do a UBI is if you change the way that money is actually made.
Bingo.
Like our proposal is find out who are the humans and have money minted by the people, not the banks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know,
create a
like
new, well, that's creating a completely new uh, GDP infrastructure.
you give everyone free universal AI and
Yep.
then have that. And then the AIs have to take the money from you that you get for being human
Yep.
because that's what matters. And actually, this is the really interesting thing. I figured it out recently. I realized what was wrong with AI. Nassim Taleb, Black Swan things, has this
Mhm.
concept of intellectual yet idiot. Like, the former SEC and our leaders and top intellectuals, they've got no skin in the game.
Yep.
AI has no skin in the game. It just is. It's computation without consciousness. Like the reason
Right.
you've been successful is not because you're using AI. And in fact, you probably spent less on AI than you would have on an intern, right? It's because you give a damn. And
Yeah.
so this becomes really, really interesting when you kind of look at what we might do afterwards and how we apply this, because the companies have too much barriers, the government has too much barriers. So we're going to see this wave coming, and it's going to be people that actually give a damn, understand context, that use the tools, that are going to just stream ahead. And that delta is going to be bigger than anything we've ever seen from the adoption of any new technology,
Well,
where
and I
those
feel
that
like
use
that's
it.
kind of where we are now. It is going to separate the haves and have-nots. It's not necessarily going to be the have-nots in terms of bank account. It's going to be based on what your ability is to kind of leverage into this next generation, which I agree. We are at a precipice right now, Mod, for sure.
Yeah, well, again, that's why I said like 1,000 days since ChatGPT. In 1,000 days, if your job can be done remotely, it can be done better by an AI. It doesn't mean that
Yep.
it will be, but it can be. And
Well,
then the robots
again,
come.
yeah. Well, listen, we're reporting and talking about this all the time, diving into topics and discussions like this. It is a big deal. I think that you had something that was a very interesting statement, and that was the attention side of things when it comes to whether it's blockchain or in any kind of industry, along with the communities, which are these cult-like tribes that seem to be building around this. And I've talked to many founders about this, both from the meme side all the way into the infrastructure side, such as something like a Ripple and an XRP, which is, I would say, one of the most rabid cult communities out there. And those are the ones I believe are going to win because those are the ones that we are seeing. And I don't know that the tools are in place for those communities to win just yet, but they will be. And that's the thing. Hey, listen, Emad, it's been great having you on. I'm going to have you back on for sure because I anticipate that we're going to see a lot of transition, both in the digital asset space, but also in this connectivity to the AI infrastructure and how that's going to look like. So, Emad Mostaque, again, the last economy. Go check out the PDF. Download it over on his website, ii.inc. You'll find stuff over there around what they are doing on intelligent internet. Thanks for coming in on the show today. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
You bet.